Judicial Service Commission is facing possible litigation, we understand, for the manner in which it has conducted interviews for the position of Chief Justice. A concerned professor, who is, we understand, from the legal profession, wrote to the JSC. The letter, which was read publicly towards the end of the interviewing process, will be now expunged from the record of the proceedings. Let's explore this in terms of what transpired during the interviews for the Chief Justice position. We're joined via Zoom by Mbekezeli Benjamin, researcher and advocacy officer at Judges Matter. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Blame, and good morning to the viewers at home.
Good to have your mind on this matter. Let's start with what I just mentioned about that letter. I don't think we were supposed to hear what the content of that letter was, but we did. It's out there. Your take on it?
Well, the letter was startling, and you're right to say they didn't really intend for us as the public to hear the contents of that letter. But essentially what it says, it's from a law professor from Rhodes University. She says she's concerned about how the JSC has behaved itself this week. She's concerned about the sexist questions that were asked of Judge Mandisamaya, and also of the unfounded and untested sexual harassment allegations that were asked of Judge Mlambo. So she says that the JSC should rerun the process. Otherwise, there will be litigation against the JSC. So that's the subject of the letter. We have not yet taken a view of the letter because it came quite late last night, and you, as you said, after 12 hours of interview. But I think the concern that the professor raises is a concern that is shared by many who watched the interviews, especially in the last 2 days, where the JSC seemed to descend into more political issues that had very little to do with whether or not the candidates were suitable for Chief Justice. And so many people are saying, look, the JSC needs to have taken a different approach, or alternatively should have tried to discipline itself on the issues that they interrogated on.
Help us understand the process, Mr. Benjamin, with regards to what is likely to come out after the deliberations. Is there likely to be a recommendation of suitability and appointability? The difference is different. There is a difference there. A ranking of the candidates, or will they come out and say, we have our pick and this is the name, Mr. President? Add to that possible litigation. What's the chances of this whole thing restarting?
So in terms of the Constitution, the President is required to consult the JSC when he is making the appointment of Chief Justice. And of course, consultation means that he can either take the advice or reject the advice. The decision rests in the hands of the President. So this interview process was part of that consultation process. The JSC is basically trying to figure out whether these candidates are suitable for appointment and whether they should, in fact, be appointed as Chief Justice. Now, the JSC has not told us what they are going to do in terms of the advice that they will give to the President. But from earlier in the week, they had indicated that they might be leaning towards a ranking system where they'll say, of the 4 candidates, this is our first choice, second choice, third choice, and the last choice. And they will communicate directly to the President and not really share with the public. But overall, in the bigger scheme of things, the interview process.
So hang on, Mr. Benjamin. I just want to take a step back. Will we not know the ranking of the JSC if they go that route in terms of ranking?
No, they said they will not communicate it directly with the public. Yes, they will have a media briefing this afternoon, but that media briefing, as we understand it, it will simply be to confirm what the JSC did over the last couple of days and what the process is going forward. They did not say that they will disclose it, their preferred candidate to the public. They said they'll first communicate it with the President, because this whole process is the president's process. It is initiated by the president and is ultimately to help the president make the appointment of the Chief Justice.
So in general, when you assess those questions over the past couple of days, would you say the questions were fair and probing enough in order to make sure that the necessary level of credibility exists in the office of the next Chief Justice?
So overall, I think the process was fair in assessing what is required of the next Chief Justice. But of course, I need to emphasize here that there were parts where the JSC lost focus. They strayed on issues that were completely irrelevant to the process. But overall, I think there were important parts where I felt they were doing a good job. For example, when they gave the candidates the opportunity to cast their vision for the judiciary, what do they intend to do should they become Chief Justice? What plans do they have in place? And giving concrete examples of the challenges that the judiciary currently faces and what they intend to do to fix those challenges. That was an important part of the process. We had never seen it before. Usually we'll just go straight to questions, but that was an important part of assessing them. And from that vision that the candidates presented, the commissioners, many of the commissioners, most of them, asked relevant questions to try and understand this vision better.
You heard a lot of them giving us a hint that they're trying to restrain themselves in terms of the decorum and the way they put their questions to the candidates. Did it matter? I remember yesterday some of them calling Judge Zondo the witness by, mistakenly, maybe in jest. But what's your take with regards to the tone and tenor of the questions being put to the candidate?
I think it was important for the JSC to sit down and speak to themselves and say, this is how we're going to behave. Because in the past, we've seen them descend into chaos. We've seen them descend into a process that was undignified. So it was important for them to keep reminding themselves of why they were there. Their task was to find out whether these senior judges are suitable to be Chief Justice. And another important aspect of this plane is that after this process, all 4 judges will go back to their courts and they need to be respected, and the reputation and dignity of the judiciary needs to be maintained. So if commissioners are going to be hurling insults or calling judges names, that sort of diminishes the dignity and reputation that they hold as judicial officers. And when they go back to the courts, it will be difficult for us as the members of the public to respect them. So the JSC needs to maintain that decorum, and we hope going forward they'll reform their rules to ensure that they hold the commissioners accountable when they misbehave.
That's an important, interesting point that you raise. Apart from the purely judicial knowledge and quality, of course, of judgments, what other qualities does the Chief Justice need to possess? What about administrative experience? What about managerial experience? Plays a part?
It absolutely does. And this is something that we as Judges Matter have put forward before the interviews, that the JSC needs to assess whether these candidates are good administrative, when they have good administrative skills, because the role of the Chief Justice is not only that of a judge, but you also administer a complex system which has many moving parts. So if you're not strong on administration, you will struggle to do the job of Chief Justice. Secondly, we need someone who is a manager, who can lead a team to success, because at the end of the day, the Chief Justice will be working with the judges at all different levels, including magistrates as well. So they need to be able to bring all of those people along, because the vision that they have will still need to be implemented at the end of the day, and you can only do so through working with other people. So leadership is an important quality.
Yesterday, ACJ Zondo spoke about patent law, depending how you want to call it. He said he hoped to inspire younger lawyers to study those branches of law that seems to have been only reserved of certain races in the past. How do you think the issue of transformation was tackled during the interviews?
Well, that is always a hot topic when it comes to JSC interviews. But this time around, I think it was overall handled in an interesting way, because they looked at a more nuanced way. Often, when you think of transformation, you think of replacing white faces with black faces, or replacing men with women. But I think during the course of the week, we heard of the different ways in which transformation manifests itself. They spoke about an anti-sexual harassment policy, for example, that the judiciary doesn't have that policy. And you need that kind of thing in order to create a conducive environment for women in particular to come into the judiciary and thrive there. There was also talk of a lack of a maternity leave policy. The judges are basically left to their own devices if they fall pregnant. That is an important aspect of transformation that we often don't look at when we think about this topic.
I remember President Mandisa Maya said, "I'm not good because I'm a woman, I'm just a good woman judge." It's something that just jumped out at everybody, isn't it? It's a quote that you probably remember for a long time to come. How did that comment resonate, not only in the legal fraternity, but society at large?
Well, I think you'll recall after she made that comment, there was clapping in the room, and the chairperson had to call it out. But that comment was important because a lot of times during the interview, there was a question about whether South Africa is ready for a woman Chief Justice. And that kind of question is inappropriate. It should not even be asked, because South Africa has always been ready for a woman Chief Justice. We've never asked whether South Africa is ready for a man Chief Justice. And so it makes no sense for us to ask that question now. But again, Justice Mandisa Maya reminded the JSC that she's a good judge. She's an excellent judge who has a proven track record over the last 22 years. So she comes here not because only she's a woman, but because she has a solid track record of leadership, of experience, of good judgment that stand her head and shoulders above the other candidates. The fact that she's also a woman is sort of a by the way. It's not an essential aspect that they should be looking at. And I think many women in the legal profession and women in society in general will resonate with that kind of sentiment.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about things that stood out for me and many other people during these interviews when JP Mlambo said there's backstabbing and gossiping in the legal profession, and he also cited judges who still carried bar gripes or bar baggage, as he put it, who try and influence him against supporting particular candidates, all based on rumors. When you assess some of the utterances that came out from the candidates, was it helpful in terms of giving society at large a good insight into what they go through?
Well, I think that was a moment where Judge Mlambo was unguarded. And you'll remember that the time that he made that comment was really when he was being pressed and being pushed around the sexual harassment allegations, and he denied them, and he said they are completely unsubstantiated, and no one has come forward to say this is what I've done, and giving details around that. And even when it was posed at the JSC interview, it was sort of an ambush, and so he was reacting to that. But you're quite right to say that kind of comment should not have been in the interview. And I think it was Commissioner Barnard who followed up to say, is that a proper comment to make about the legal profession? Because that is a sweeping statement that is likely to tarnish the reputation of the legal profession. Is not intended to build. That kind of comment should never have come from the mouth of someone who wants to be Chief Justice of South Africa.
So what happens next, sir, with regards to this deliberation? Do you have some insight for us in terms of, I understand they started meeting at 9 o'clock, if the comment from the chair of these interviews is anything to go by. What happens from now until they come out for this press conference?
So the JSC is currently at the moment sitting in deliberations. In those deliberations, I think first and foremost, they'll decide what the process is going forward. What will the advice to the president look like? Like we said earlier, they were not clear whether they will send one name or four names or they'll rank the names. So that is a decision on that will be taken. But secondly, they'll also reflect on the 4 days of interviews. They'll look at the advantages and disadvantages of the different candidates and what they had to say in response to the questions. And then they will assess whether those questions and answers gave them an insight into whether this person is suitable to be Chief Justice. Now, after their deliberations, like I said, they will do a press briefing to update everyone on what's currently happening. And then they'll inform the president on their preferences for Chief Justice.
Right.
The president is the ultimate decision maker in this, so he will take the final decision.
Right. I'm so interested to know, because I have not been in any of those deliberations. I hope you can give us some insight in terms of how does it work practically. So you have all the commissioners sitting there. Do they pick candidate A and then just, pros and cons, and then move on to the next one and the next one? Is that how it works practically?
So the JSC relies on practices. They don't often have written rules around this thing, which is a problem, and I hope they will fix. But the way that we understand it and how it has happened in the past is that they will first say, okay, this is what we came here to do. We're looking for the candidates for Chief Justice, and then they'll go through each candidate. I imagine they'll start with the interview on Tuesday and say, how did this candidate do? And then they'll move on until the Friday interview. And then based on all of those views, they'll either at the end, or I think after every candidate has been considered, they'll either say yes or no, this candidate should move forward. And then after that, they'll at the end of everything, they'll say, these are our 4, or these are our preferences, or this is our ranking. This part is a little bit unclear to us.
Mbekezeli, Benjamin, always instructive, always informative. We thank you very much indeed. We'll rely on your better mind to, take us through this and understand it. Sometimes it can get a bit complicated, but we appreciate your time. Be well.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
All right. Mbekezeli Benjamin, Research and Advocacy Officer at Judges Matter. Did he say good afternoon? It's been a long week, I think. It's been a long week. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back shortly. Stay with us.